The Ambitious Radio Network. Conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Are you an entrepreneur, startup junkie, or just someone interested in improving their leadership skills? If you're looking to be motivated, inspired, and uncover what it takes to get to the next level, listening to Ambitious Radio will be well worth the investment of your time. We have weekly engaging conversations with today's most influential thought leaders and entrepreneurs as they discuss their successes, failures, tipping points, and other priceless information that you can apply immediately after listening. Now, here's your host, Doug Parker.
All right, welcome back to the Ambitious Radio Network. This is your host, Doug Parker, and today we've got another exciting guest. Today we've got Lee Caraher with us, and Lee is the CEO of Forte PR and Digital Marketing. She's known for her practical solutions to big problems. Lee is also the author of Millennials and Management, based upon her experience of failing and then succeeding at retaining millennials, and I'm sure all of us could use that, especially in this day and age. And she's got a new book that's coming out called The Boomerang Principle that we published in April of 2017. Welcome to the show, Lee. How are you?
I'm great, Doug. Thanks so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Well, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, what did I leave out in the intro? I know there's a little business there, but tell me about you personally. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Sure. I grew up on the East Coast, actually in the Boston area, and then in Providence, where I went to high school. And then I went to college in Minnesota because I felt that I should get out of New England, because New England is very provincial, as we know. All of our areas of the country are very provincial. And I decided that I should probably get out of where I knew, and I should go somewhere else. I ended up in Minnesota at Carleton College, which is in Northfield, and went in as a pre-med and came out with a degree in medieval history, not a pre-med.
There you go. There you go. So there's some medieval time medical stuff, huh? Not so much.
Well, we could talk about that for a long time, but I will not bore you with all that. And then I moved back to Boston to get into public relations, and that has been my career since college, which God, it sounds boring. But I went back to Boston and started my career in public relations. And after a few years, there was this year, I guess I was 27, 28, and all of my friends left the area. They either got married or they went to school. They moved across country for jobs. And all I knew was working. And I was working all the time, really not seeing the sun. And I went to the doctor, who said, this was before sun sensitivity had a name. I don't even know what the name is. But he said, you're just depressed because you're not getting enough, sun. What you should do, Lee, is go into a tanning booth every day for the month of February. I was like, I'm Irish. I can't go into a sun tanning booth. I would be a French fry. So I decided to move to California, where the sun is. And first I moved to Los Angeles, where I lived at the beach, which was a lot of fun. And I worked at an agency in Century City. And then I got recruited to one of my clients, Sega of America, the video game company. And I moved from Southern California to Northern California to the San Francisco area and worked for Sega for 5 years. Launched several platforms. It was an awesome job. What a great company. Learned so much. And then I decided to leave there and started an agency for Interpublic, which is one of the largest media holding companies in the world. And then I started my own company in 2002, and I've done this ever since. Cool. That is me in a nutshell.
Well, hey, and there's a couple of things I want to highlight there, because there's, you talk about this sun sensitivity. And, I literally just now today, I went to Chick-fil-A, not that I'm not endorsing them or anything, but I do love me some Chick-fil-A, but I literally opened the sunroof on my vehicle. I rolled the windows down because the sun is shining here in Texas, and it was very nice, and just absorbed a little sun because, like you, I work, like a maniac, probably 80, 90 hours a week. And if you're just getting these fluorescent lights, it's not good for you.
It is not good for you. I mean, really not good for you. In fact, my company is moving in a couple of months, and we are spending the extra money not to have the fluorescent light over our heads because people are getting migraines, and we spend our time in front of computer screens. And anyway, the sun makes a big difference in the day for sure.
Absolutely. Well, and in addition to that, one of the things, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not giving any kind of medical advice, so I'll put that little disclosure out there. But I've heard that like vitamin D, I think it's D3, is when you're deficient in that, which is what you get from the sun. So I even take that as a supplement because I'm just trying to, get the best balance because I can't sit outside all day long and goof around or whatever. But
as do I, Doug. I take the same supplement, D3. Absolutely.
There you have it. Now, and Sega, let's talk about that for a minute because I remember when I was growing up, I made the decision in the very early days that I wanted to get a Sega whenever they came out in the 80s, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I did.
You had a Genesis. Did you have a Genesis
I think it was before Genesis, to be honest with you. I had one that had like a little shooting game and a motorcycle game was the one it came with.
Yep.
But as when Nintendo came out, I went that way and all my friends went the Nintendo route. And in the beginning, I think Nintendo kind of took off a little bit, and I was stuck with my little game, and it was the only one that I had, and I couldn't trade with my friends or anything, the Super Mario Brothers and all that. But but I will tell you that I really enjoyed it. So what was that like? I guess maybe you were there after probably that initial time. It was maybe the Genesis version?
I got there in 94. And that was when we were launching the 32X, which was a 32-bit attachment to the Genesis, which is a 16-bit machine.
Okay.
And was there through the Saturn launch and then planned the Dreamcast launch for the company, but left before then because we all knew that Dreamcast was going to be very successful as a platform, but very detrimental to the bottom line for the company. But it was an amazing experience. It was, still is such a beloved brand. Sonic the Hedgehog is still recognized. It's everywhere. And this is $1.5 billion company in this country. And I was a vice president of communications there. And I ran all of communications, all of customer service, all events. And we were sponsoring Super Bowl parties and all this kind of stuff. And we were doing so much stuff. And I learned so much there. I think over the course of the 4 or 5 years I was there, I launched over 2,000 products. We testified on Capitol Hill. We had, we just had so much going on. It was a great, great experience. Worked my patootie off for sure. But my career since then has really been based on the people I met at Sega. So I could not discount how important that stint was in my career.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about, maybe through that process or leading up to kind of your company, some of the obstacles that you ran into and then how you kind of persevered through those.
Sure. Well, I was born. No.
That's pretty difficult for all of us, okay? That you don't have the exclusive rights to that one.
Exactly. Well, I think, being a woman in a Japanese company in Silicon Valley in the 90s, there are a lot of things stacked up against you there, frankly. So learning how to, different cultures together, being in a very male-dominated area, trying not and being a strong woman in the situation, right, and how you maneuver that. Hopefully I did it with some grace. I'm definitely not graceful, but, I think I did it pretty well. But it was definitely learning, and it was challenging. Like sometimes I had to bite my tongue and say, actually, I'm not going to pour the tea. I'm actually the highest ranking person in this room, so you can pour the tea. Hopefully I said it a little better than that, but I probably wasn't thinking any better than that. When I started when I went to the Interpublic companies, started a company for them called Red Whistle. That was an amazing opportunity for me to start a company within a company. So I was able to create a brand. We grew from $0 to $25 million in 2.5 years. That was during the dot-com boom. And so I definitely had the wind at my back for that. But I learned a ton about how to scale and how to choose clients and how not to choose clients, and really more about what I wanted to do. Fundamentally, I disagree with service companies being publicly traded, and so many of them are, because it's a very moment in time where you can serve the street and serve the client at the same time. And that very much informed me when I was decided to leave the company. It was challenging there. It was during the dot-com boom and then the bust. And The company was also had annealed with another company, so there's a lot of merging going on. And everyone around me, this is 2001 now, everyone around me is losing their jobs. Like I was an executive vice president within Interpublic and a president of my small brand within all of the brands. And all my peers losing their jobs because it's 2001 and the world is shrinking in terms of opportunity for public relations in technology. And I'm the breadwinner in my family. My husband is the chief home officer. I am the chief bacon officer. He works part-time, and mostly we have a special needs son. We have an older son who's now 19 and a special needs son who is 16 now. And mostly my husband has been the coordinator of all things kid. And he also worked part-time. So my husband's like, don't lose your job. Oh my God, no one's getting work. 2001, you can't lose your job. It wasn't very much fun. I was traveling around the country, laying people off, which is never fun. And I wasn't able to really make all the decisions that I thought were best for our business because we really did have to return to the street, which is where I really sort of got stuck with, oh gosh, I really don't think this is a great business model. But I had to bring, the bacon home, as it were. Then the company was so generous to me. I really learned so much there, great people there. But the company was very generous to me. In this annealment process, they offered me 7 different jobs. And finally, I took one. I took one on September 4th, 2001. And I flew home from New York. And a week later was September 11th. And September 11th really solidified for me. I was so lucky not to be on that plane because I had been in New York. I'd flown home from New York exactly a week before. Number one. Number two, it hit me like, oh my gosh, it could have been me. Number 3, it hit me, I don't really like what I'm doing. And if I'm going to be traveling all over the country and the world, and I have these 2 young children, an infant and a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. And it really crystallized for me how I wanted to spend my time. So I, gave my resignation, gave them the, exercise my contract, and I was going to take a year off. I'd never taken a year off. I'd never really taken time off. And like I said, my second son has special needs, and we're just sort of figuring that out. He was 11 months old at the time. And I thought that I would spend a year, being with my infant and my 3-year-old and thinking about what was next and all this kind of stuff. Well, I drove my husband crazy. So, and that's basically the bottom line. There's a lot of things that happened, but I drove my husband crazy because I was spending a lot of time with my kids. I was spending 2 hours a day at yoga, and a person like yourself or myself who's working 80, 90 hours a week, that's a lot of time we have still left. And I had an immaculate house. My house was pristine. I had color-coded closets. I had a laundry system. I was lady who lunched. I was doing all this stuff. But basically, my sock program, my single sock eradication program, drove my husband over the edge. And he said, if you don't go back to work, we're not going to make it. And I sat down like, okay, I am a little nuts about these single socks. And I decided to start looking for work again way before my 1 year. And I really didn't want to go back to, like I said, to the publicly traded agency world because of what I said. And I was looking at jobs much like the one I had at Sega. And I was sort of down that path when my mother got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And she and my dad lived in Wisconsin at the time, and we lived in San Francisco. And I dropped everything that day, and my dad and my mom called in the morning, and I was on a plane by 1:30, and I was in Wisconsin by 10 o'clock p.m. that day. And it was very clear to me at that moment that I was going to have to pull myself out of those 2 jobs that I was up for. I was really, deciding between the 2 because I was not going to be able to do those jobs and be with my mother in her last days. She was given 4 months to live. So I pulled myself out of those jobs and said, okay, I'm going to be with my mom. My mom ended up living 4 years instead of 4 months, which was a huge gift of time. And it was an amazing thing that she persevered through that. And she fought, and just an amazing story, which that's another podcast. So I decided, I'm the one. I have two sisters, but I'm the one who had the most capacity. I'm the one who had the most flexibility. So I decided to start my company out of that need to bring home the bacon, but also be able to do what I needed to do in life, vis-a-vis my children, my family, my husband, and what I wanted to do in the world, which was to actually not just, make a buck, but actually make a difference. So I started my company in 2002 with my friend Dan. And our goal was to get home at 6 o'clock on Fridays, which we had really never done in our careers, and to work with people and companies who are doing really positive things in their categories and not to work with jerks. And 15 years later, we have, 35, 36 people. We're here in San Francisco and in New York and Boston. And we still do that. We still work with companies that are doing great things in their categories who aren't jerks. Dan has left the company. He wanted to go do something much larger, and I really don't want to be in a large company anymore. And of course, our business has changed dramatically since 2002. Facebook didn't exist. Twitter doesn't exist. All these things that we take for granted today in the work of public relations and influencer relations and media relations didn't exist. So through the time I started the company to now, we're at our fourth iteration in terms of really what Double Forte stands for, but and what the work that we do, but the impact that we have with our clients remains the same over that time.
Cool.
That is a long story. Sorry about that.
No. That's no worries at all. And what we typically do is we'll do the segments of the show that we can do on the radio, and then we'll kind of do the uncut version when they tune into the podcast. So we've got a good breaking point a few minutes ago. So no worries at all. I want to hear your stories because they're really great info. And there's one other thing I wanted to kind of hit on that you mentioned. So you talked about, especially with PR. So you talked about Facebook and all the social media that's out there, but can you just elaborate maybe in maybe 1 or 2 minutes of 2 or 3 things that make that a positive that you can use and leverage those things, and then 2 or 3 things that maybe are negative about having Facebook and Twitter that can be problematic?
Yeah. So I think the change in communication in business and in personal lives has been so dramatic in the last 10 years, right? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest. I could go on. There's so many that we don't even talk about. And there's been a lot of advantages to that, right? The big advantages are that companies can get much closer to their customers than they ever could before. In the past, public relations was really media relations. The purpose of a public relations firm was actually to talk to the media, who were then going to talk to their readers, right? The customers. And with social media, it's really been the disintermediation of journalism, which has a plus and a minus, and companies are so much closer to their customers today and their consumers through social media. The benefit of that is manyfold. One, they're getting much better feedback. Much faster feedback. It's almost impossible to keep up with the consumer feedback in a rational way, and really moving to satisfy market needs much quicker. On the activist side, now companies are dealing with many more activist consumers, activist investors than they've ever had to do in the past, because they have direct access and because everybody in their hand has the potential to create a movement, right? A potential to take fire, frankly, on something that they feel passionate about by using a good hashtag. A couple examples of that are Grab Your Wallet, which is very, it's huge right now. And it was really this woman who doesn't particularly like what's going on in the administration right now, and her thought process was, just don't buy anything with the brand associated with the president on it. And she created this hashtag Grab Your Wallet, and all of a sudden, companies all over the country are either defending their choice to keep those brands in the market in their place, or stripping those brands out of the place and dealing with people who are happy about it and people who are not happy about the decisions. This frankly could never have happened so fast or so furiously without social media, and that's a lot of power in the consumer's hand. The negative part of it is a fewfold. One is we're definitely in a blended world. We're in a paper world and a virtual world. We're and how you serve a consumer base that goes from a 5-year-old to a 100-year-old, it is not monolithic. It used to be monolithic. It is not monolithic anymore, and it's very time consuming and confusing. And people, I think, tend to do too many things instead of choosing the things that really matter to their constituency. So it is exciting, but you don't want to be so far out there on the edge that you're bug splat, right? And you're chasing all the shiny objects that most of the shiny objects, and I've been in Silicon Valley now for a little more than 20 years. A lot of shiny objects here do not ever sort of get out of their box, and becoming discerning about which ones to chase and which ones to wait on is part of the game.
Sure. Well, and it actually kind of reminds me when you're talking about those things. Back on episode 32, we had Jay Bear on the show, and he's got a book called Hug Your Haters. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
I am.
But it was when I read the book, I was like, I got to get this guy on the show. I mean, it's so unbelievable, the voices that folks have in the good old days, as they call them. People would call you, and if they had a complaint, they would have to pick up the phone and call you and leave a message and tell you, and you'd have to call them back and whatever. Now, they don't even give you the courtesy sometimes to do that. They'll just go and blast you wide open on all kinds of social media, and you may or may not even know who they are. They may just put it on some chat room, and you can't even correct it. So when they give you feedback, you better take it, and you better do something with it. And obviously, like you had alluded to, that's kind of one of the changes. PR is not just like it used to be, where you would communicate things to the media that was controlled by the big media people. It's getting the message out there. So that's really great information, and a good place for us to kind of transition into the next segment. So we'll take a quick break, and then right after this, we'll hear more from Lee as she talks about her career pursuits and some of the experiences that she's gone through right here on the Ambitious Radio Network.
Could you lose your career because of your faith? Could your pastor be sued because of his sermons? Can students and teachers be punished because of what they believe about God or what they say? Can the government or even your employer force you to violate your beliefs? Get the answers, and if necessary, legal protection from First Liberty Institute. This is Kelly Shackelford, president of First Liberty. We're the nation's largest legal organization dedicated exclusively to restoring religious freedom in America. In fact, First Liberty's nationwide network of top attorneys win over 90% of their cases. We've won at the Supreme Court all the way down to the local schools. Visit firstliberty.org to learn more about how First Liberty is protecting religious freedom for all Americans in the workplace, public schools, your church, the military, and more. That's firstliberty.org.
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and I'm just getting a ton of great information. I've written down golden nuggets like crazy, so I'm appreciative of it. So we've got Lee Caraher here with us, and I'm intrigued by the things that you're talking about, and I'm anxious to hear more about. I know you talked about the millennial. You wrote a book about it, Millennials and Management, and that's a struggle because I didn't grow up in this millennial age. I grew up in 80, 90 hours a week, and what I've seen is most of the millennials, they want to not work as much. They just want quality of life in a different environment. So give me a couple highlights on that book and tell me kind of what it's all about and how you found out how to bridge the gap.
Yeah. So in 2009, after the big meltdown in the economy, when I started the company, we only hired people with 10 years of experience. So by definition, they're about 30, 32 years old. And in 2009, after everything melted down in the economy, my point of view is, having been through many meltdowns in different bubbles, that if your business experiences any sort of meltdown, it could be a small meltdown where you lose half your revenue that's not small, but in the scheme of life, you could lose half your revenue for something, or your local economy, something happens, or the national economy or the world economy, whatever the economies you are living in change, you need to examine your business model, because most likely the business model that got you to that point where something broke is not the business model that's going to take you into the future. So we were examining our business model, and because we were dependent on people who had 10 years of experience, one, they're much more expensive than college graduates, recent college graduates. And two, what we realized in San Francisco was that we were going to have a big donut hole where there were going to be no people with 10 years of experience for about 5 years, because between the year 2000 and 2004, almost nobody got hired in San Francisco in my business during that. Really, it was a crater here. 80,000 people, professionals, and their families left San Francisco Bay Area between 2000 and 2002. So there's almost nobody here who's going to have 10 years, a big donut hole of, talent missing. So oh gosh, and you always need to bring people from the bottom, whatever the bottom is in terms of the qualifications you require in your company. You always need to bring people from the bottom in all the time. So we decided we needed to hire only short people. We all had to hire younger people. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. We had to start hiring younger people, and I really thought nothing of this, because at my previous 2 jobs I'd had over 800 people and over 700 people, and most of them were under 30, and I had a great reputation for hiring young people and keeping them and advancing their careers. Well, that was not the case in 2010 and 11, when we finally got around to hiring more, people who were under 26 or 7 years old. And in 2011, we had hired 6 millennials who were all gone within 8 weeks of each other, and they were all gone within 3 months. And I had never had 100% failure in recruiting in my whole career. And one person could be their problem. You can make one bad hire out of 6. I'd made bad hires, but not 6 at a time. So I decided, okay, one could be their problem, but 6 has got to be something about us. What do we do wrong? What is going on here that 6 people didn't make it even 3 months in our company? It was really a body blow to me. I took it very personally, which is my nature, but, and then I immediately moved to, well, what the hell just happened? I have to fix it. So I started researching, and I found out what a millennial was. I didn't even know it existed, because before I researched it, and then everything was so negative. Millennials are entitled. Millennials are lazy. Everyone is so negative about millennials. And my point of view is an entire generation cannot be entitled. It's statistically impossible that 80 million people are entitled and are lazy. But there's definitely a difference in perception and reality. And so I not with the purpose of writing a book, but I set out to understand it. And just so we could fix our company. My little baby company, I was like, we got to fix this. A company without millennials is a company without a future. So did a lot of research, interviewed tons of people, and through some trial and error, we figured out what works and what kept people in their seats, how we recruited better, how we brought people on board, and how they stayed with us over time. In San Francisco in 2014 and 15, the average tenure for a millennial under 30 years old was about 18 months. Well, that's so expensive. From a business perspective, barely get someone up to speed in 8 months, frankly. And if they're going to leave you, you're just turning over money if you have people leave of their own volition in 18 months. So my goal was to double it up. I said, my goal is to keep everybody in the company twice as long as they think they're going to stay. Because if I can keep someone here 36 months instead of 18 months, I've saved at least double their salary from recruiting and losing and all that kind of stuff. And B, we've created an environment where people would want to stay, and that would create some goodwill and become a business generator for us. I started talking about it, and we started hiring and not losing anybody with this application of what we learned. And someone asked me to write a book. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know how useful that will be. And then someone else called and said, please share your stuff in a book. I just want to give this. I don't have a book. And in the end, I was talking to a publisher about something totally different. And she said, I will publish that book. And I'm like, what book are you talking about? And books don't really fall into authors' laps. And this one did. And so I set out to share what we learned the very hard way in my book, Millennials in Management, where we sort of look at the primary myths about, and I call them myths, but the primary themes, the negative themes about millennials, and explore them to see, A, where they come from, B, how real they are, and C, how you move forward from them. And that's what my book does.
Gotcha. No, and that's great information. And I love what you said about a company without millennials is a company without a future, because there's a lot of people that just want to run from, those folks that they're perceived entitled and they don't work hard or lazy, whatever. And, that's a pretty big generation to have a gap on each side of, that you only have either the really old, or the really young. And that's a tough deal.
Millennials is the largest generation we have right now in the American, right? We have 80 million millennials. We have 78 million boomers. We have 45 million Xers. Z's, the Generation Z is now people under the age of 16 is how Pew Research does it. I just use Pew as my source because it's just easier that way. Mm-hmm. So millennials are going nowhere. This is 80 million people. Well, they're going to be running the place pretty soon. And for boomers who are hanging on to their jobs, and there are lots of them, and we see, and it may not be true where you are, it may not be true where you are, Doug, but here we see that there's a lot of ageism in the technology world, and people hanging onto their jobs past 50 and men finding jobs after 50 is very hard here, because there's so many young people in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley's been such a young thing always. And most boomers, and I'm a boomer, so I feel, and I've researched this a lot, but most boomers are not ready for their retirement, cannot leave the jobs that they thought they'd be able to leave when they thought they'd be able to leave them. And 2008 really just solidified that, right? I interviewed lots and lots and lots of people who were in their 60s who had planned to retire between 2008 or 2009 and are still working today trying to make it up what they lost, right? So we have, I think a lot of this negativity comes from our own disappointment in the reality of our own existences vis-a-vis what we expected, right? Because boomers grew up in a time where the economy could accommodate us. In general, right? In general, the economy was growing so much in that 25 years where boomers were coming into the workplace, they could just accommodate 78 million people. Never happened in the world what happened in our economy for those 25 years. And we should not expect it to return, frankly. And if a business is counting on that to return, then it's a business that, is making some bad decisions. So we have people who can't leave work, right? Who wish they didn't have to be there. We have a tsunami of young people coming into the workplace who want to work, but want to work very differently than the boomers do. And then we have the Xers in the middle, the smallest generation that's working right now, who are hitting, the oldest Gen Xer this year is 52, right? So they're middle-aged. And there are not enough of them. There are not enough of Gen Xers to take the leadership positions that boomers had. So it's just there's a lot going on in the disgruntlement around millennials that has nothing really to do with millennials. It has to do with us.
That's good. That's real good. One of the things that I've got a 20, let's see, my son will be 22 here, and actually, my goodness gracious, in about 9 days. And then my daughter is 20.
It's time to get a present.
Oh, my goodness. I was like, whoa. So anyway, but yeah, so I've got kids that are in an age, and I've told my kids this often. I said, hey, look, I would love, but who wouldn't love to be 20 years younger in general? But I would love to be y'all's age, know what I know now, and compete against these millennials. I would smoke all you people. But, my daughter, she kind of gets some of that. But the frustration is, and she's experienced a little bit of it, even at 20, she works at Nordstrom and one of their flagship stores. Yeah. And the problem is that eventually you wind up managing who you're working with, and then you have the same problems that Dad has. But
Exactly.
so I'm gonna have to get her this book, because I'm telling you, it sounds like there's some really good meat, that you can learn from, because there's no way around it. You can try to avoid it, but you're handicapping yourself, if you don't find a way to work with it.
You're absolutely, that's an excellent way of saying it, Doug. You're totally handicapping yourself if you can't find a way forward, because a lot of millennials work differently than we do. They are used to having the power to connect with anybody on the planet and get any information they want, or at least a perception of anybody on the planet and the perception of any information they want in their hands. They've got more power in their hands than went to the moon. And we know, what the advantage of that is. There are many advantages. There are many disadvantages of that. We could talk about that forever and a day. But the advantage of it is that they connect dots that we don't connect. And sometimes they connect them too quickly, and it's not very deep. At the same time, millennials also believe that they can lead and expect to lead from any seat in the boat, right? And they imagine they're coming in and out of the leadership role all the time. Millennials are very we-oriented. A lot of the time you hear the millennials are, me generation. My experience is that millennials are very we generation. And one of the biggest things I learned in managing, I really don't like that word, but leading millennials is, when I was coming into the workplace, if someone said to me, Lee, you are not living up to your potential, it would have been crushing. I mean, that was generally what you'd heard in leadership. You're not living up to your potential. We think you can do so much more, blah, 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 blah. And it was motivating. If you say that to a millennial today, they could give a flying whatever, right, about what you think about their potential, because they have a lot of confidence in their potential. Mm-hmm. However, if you say you let the team down because you dropped the ball, you get a millennial in the corner, in the fetal position, going, I'll never do it again. And I mean it, right? Because their social structure is very different from the boomers, which is the boomers grew up in a hierarchical situation. Hierarchy is antithetical to the millennial experience, who can get to anybody they want at any time. It's very flat. So if you talk about you let the team down by dropping the ball, and all these other people had to change their lives because you screwed up, it never happens again. So, you got to find the ways to do it. And my book really is, to me, read by teams. It's not a management book where you're going to change your language. It's really meant to be read by anybody in a team. And every chapter at the end has, management do's and don'ts and millennial do's and don'ts, because it's about collaborating to get to a better place. You can't count on one cohort to make it better for the other.
Gotcha. Now, as we kind of wrap up this segment, I do have maybe one or two more questions, but primarily, let me ask you this. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing at any point during your life, what would it be? And what time of your life? What were you doing at that time?
If I could go back and tell myself anything, I would tell myself not to get that perm, because that was terrible. No. I would tell myself to just be myself. When I was in my 20s, I think, we're all a little quirky. There's nobody who's really mainstream. We're all a little quirky in our own ways. And, I think we become more valuable in business and in life the more comfortable we are in our skins. And because we just sort of shed all the anxiety and all the effort around fitting in, right? And if we can all just be ourselves, there's a lot more pleasure in the day, and there's a lot less inefficiency around. And just to be totally tactical about it, there's a lot of inefficiency around being comfortable in your skin than the inefficiency of spending energy on things that really don't matter. And I would tell myself that around age 26.
Got it. Well, that's great information, really, for anybody. It truly is, because we can waste a whole bunch of emotional, time and just collateral on just going through dealing with that kind of stuff. So that's
so true.
That's really, really good. So we'll wrap up this segment. It was great stuff for our ambitious listeners. And if you like what you're hearing and you want to be updated on new guests that are coming on, you can text the word ambitious, that's AMBITIOUS, to 69922. Standard messaging rates do apply, so see the website for full details. And next, we'll be talking more with Lee about the ambitious things that she's doing now. What's next? Right here on the Ambitious Radio Network. Are you tired of paying too much for electricity from the former monopolies and getting terrible customer service? Do you really even know how much you're paying per kilowatt? Sometimes they quote you a lower rate, but then add back in the delivery charge. Ugh, how frustrating. Go to electricity.guru, that's right, .guru, for your free analysis. Who knows, with just a few referrals, you could actually earn free electricity. If you're tired of paying outrageous electricity bills, do something about it. Would you like to get a significant discount or even get free electricity? Go to electricity.guru and compare our rates to what you're currently paying. Many of our clients are saving anywhere from 15 to 20%. We also have a referral program that allows you to earn free electricity. Yes, free electricity. And you cannot beat free cents per kilowatt. Award-winning service, competitive rates, and low deposits, if even required. Go to electricity.guru for more details. That's electricity.guru. We offer free energy credits to customers who refer and activate 15 or more qualified customers to our electricity service and are not passed due on their bill. To get your free energy credit, your customers must be referred through the free customer gathering website. See electricity.guru for more details. All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network, and I'll tell you what, these answers are fantastic. We're getting tons of content, and if you are tuning in on the radio right now, you are missing out on a couple of nuggets, I promise you. So you do want to tune into the show after the show where you can hear the whole uncut version, because Lee is bringing it. I'm telling you right now, how to work with the millennials, what to do, how to push, pull, how to say things just a little bit differently, and it does make a huge difference. So let's jump in real quick. I know we've talked about kind of what you're working on now. We've talked about your book, but let's talk about what's next. How do you go through that transition? I know you said that you weren't really wanting to write a book, but then you kind of got dropped in your lap a couple times, but now here you are fixing to release another book, and it's called The Boomerang Principle. So tell us about that project and how you started it.
Yeah. So the Boomerang Principle, it's called the Boomerang Principle, the Essential. I'm screwing up my books. The Boomerang Principle, How to Inspire Lifetime Loyalty from Your Employees. And this book is about how to shift your mindset to work with the current and the future workforce around loyalty. There is so much negativity around loyalty in the workplace, and it really does. There's a lot about millennials there because when I was interviewing people and I was being interviewed by people for my first book, Millennials in Management, I had so many comments. They're so not loyal. They're not loyal. So why would I spend any time educating them and showing them what the ropes if they're just going to leave me? I heard that over and over and over again, sort of the whole you're dead to me concept, right? And frankly, if your employees are dead to you after they leave you, you are spending way too much time looking for new ones because you're killing yourself because the culture, we've moved the culture along in this. And so what I set out to do is show people how to create environments and cultures that people want to come back to. Because if a culture is something good to come back to, it is hard to leave. And if you can, again, same theme, if you can keep good people in your company longer than they think they want to stay when they start, you have saved money and you have made more profit and you've created an environment that is valuable. And I think for high performers in any category, the talent, the war on talent to get the best people into your organizations is only going to increase. It is not going to get easier just because there are 80 million millennials coming onto the scene. And the culture of return is a culture of stay and a culture of very high performance, which is where we all need to be. So that's this book is all about that.
And that's so important. As an entrepreneur myself, one of the things that you hate to see, every once in a while there's an employee that leaves that you're glad to see them leave. But most of the time, it's someone that's been recruited, picked off, or going somewhere else, and it's frustrating. You can talk yourself into saying, well, hey, they did this and this and this, wrong, and just so you can somehow justify it in your mind.
Yeah.
But like you said, it costs so much money to get somebody ramped back up to speed. Maybe it's 7-8 months before they're really back to a break even.
Minimum.
Yeah, even if they're a pretty talented person to begin with.
Yeah.
And so that makes a huge difference. Now, let's transition just a little bit because I know we've talked a lot about the employees and the millennials. But let's talk about, how you got to that point. Let's talk about mentoring.
Sure.
Let's talk about
Absolutely.
who you look up to and who you follow.
Well, let me talk to you first about how I got to that point on the boomerang principle. It's really happened in 2000 when the economy was booming. I had all these people. My company went from $0 to $25 million in 18 months. I mean, that was fast, right? As for people. And it was brutal. People were being recruited and picked off, like you said, all the time. And we were expected to counter, just to keep the butts in the seats. And I woke up one day, I'm like, it's exhausting. I'm like exhausted by this. And I just woke up and said, you know what? I'm not going to counter anymore. I'm going to go against corporate mandate. I'm not going to counter anymore. And then I didn't even get to tell my leadership team what we were doing. And the next day, someone walked into my office and said, I got a job here and I'm going to leave. And I said, good luck. And that is not what he was expecting. He was expecting me to say, and here's an extra $10,000. And I didn't say it. And he was pissed. He was like, you're not going to counter? I'm like, no, I'm done countering. But you countered Joe last week. I'm like, yep. And that was the last one I did. And I and first of all, I felt so much better. I think I grew 3 inches just by doing that. And then he was mad. I mean, he left my office going, she's not going to counter me. And of course, that meant everybody in the office knew he was coming in to see how much money he could get out of me, right? And I just stayed in my office for a while. But at the end of the day, after he had left, I came out. Everyone started looking at me like, what happened to her? And I said, let's have a meeting. And I said, okay, so this young man came in the office and he told me he was leaving and he asked me to counter. And I said, no, I am done countering. From now on, we're going to spend all of our attention, all of our energy working on the people who are here, not the people who have already stepped out of the office halfway because they're looking for a new job. And the smiles on people's face, the relief people felt was amazing. And people stopped leaving. People stopped leaving when I stopped countering. So that's really been a business principle for me since 2000. Yeah, 2000. And in my company today, we're 36 people today, and 7 people are returners, are boomerangs, have come back to me because I never counter when someone leaves. When you hire someone, you know they're going to leave you. It should not be a surprise that someone's going to leave you, right? They're going to leave. The question is how you keep them. And you keep them by knowing what they want to do, by making sure that your culture is something that's worthwhile, and by maintaining a very high performance standard and supporting those people reaching it. And I could, there's a lot there. So I'm sorry I went back a little bit for you, Doug, but that was really important for me to share.
I'm glad you did. I mean, like I said, I always make notes all the way through the shows, but I mean, I'm already up to like point number 20 of just stuff I'm writing down. So I've got to put them in some kind of bite size enough to text them out and Facebook them and stuff, but they are really good. And, when you hire someone, you know that they're going to leave. You know that in the beginning, but like you said, trying to find ways to boomerang them, which is really where the title comes back, where you've created an environment where they, if they're dead to you, you lose that. But I've seen it before. When you bring back a former employee that was a pretty decent employee to begin with, there's no 18-month, ramp or 8-month ramp up. There's like they just sit down in the seat and they're productive instantaneously.
And they're productive. And the goodwill that you have, there's lots of things, right? So one, they left you and they learned something. So you're going to benefit from them, whatever their experience was when they were out somewhere else, and they return to your company, you're going to benefit for whatever that experience is, number one. Number two, they are validating your proposition for employees. They're validating by returning. And that is great news for everybody who's already there, who's thinking, maybe it'll be better somewhere else. And someone returns and goes, it's not that great out there, people. And it really does create a virtuous circle that way. And in terms of onboarding, yes, you have to onboard in a different way than people who are new to you. But the speed at which they become fully functional is, maybe 30 days, not 9 months. It's a win-win-win all the way around.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm glad we spent a little extra time on that. So let's jump in this. The next couple of minutes, let's talk about that mentoring piece, because obviously, and I can tell you're super bright and you're kind of like building airplanes on the way down and figuring stuff out.
Oh my goodness!
But you got to be getting information from somewhere. So are there people that you look up to that are mentoring or you're following, or how does that work for you?
Absolutely. I do have a couple mentors that I have a mastermind group that I meet with every Friday for an hour. We've been together for about 2 years, and that's been hugely valuable. I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is the YPO for entrepreneurs, and that is super, super helpful. It's all peers who own and have started their own entities. In terms of people I'm following, lots of people. I mean, I am a voracious reader. I think the best leaders are the ones who are constantly learning, what you're doing, Doug, in terms of sharing these people's stories and asking these questions. We're all getting better by listening to the questions, the answers, right? We're just, there's a nugget I could use. There's a nugget I could use. So Daniel Goleman's work, Tom Rath's work, Dory Clark's work, these are all books. So Daniel Goleman is Primal Leadership and Emotional Intelligence, and Tom Rath is Fully Charged, and Strength Finders, and Dory Clark is Stand Out. Whitney Johnson, Disrupt Yourself. These kinds of people have a lot of impact on me. And I tried to, Sean Murphy on The Optimistic Workplace, these kinds, Andy Kramer. I mean, I could go on for days. Andy Kramer on Breaking Through Bias. So I look for people who are solving problems, not just pontificating. And those are the kind of people that really influence my day.
That's great information, and listeners, if you're driving down the road right now, go back and reference the show notes, because we'll put links to all these different books. And what I always like to hear is, there's always these books that are out there, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, whatever the case is. But then there's also 2 or 3 new books that you hear that you've not heard before that give good information. And so we'll put links to all that so you can go and check them out, download them, listen to them, read them, whatever your preferred method of absorbing the information is. And so let's do this. Let's talk about a couple of more things, because what's next for you? Because now you've gotten a couple books under your belt. You've got the launch that's coming up here in a few weeks. But have you thought, do you want to continue to write books, or is this just kind of a random situation? What's next for you?
Well, I think, my agency's doing really well, and we have expanded and done places, and I really enjoy it still, but I don't anticipate being here forever. I think there always comes a time, and sort of thinking about out to 5-6 years, 6 years from now, I probably won't be in the company, which my company knows. We've talked about this out loud. And this, definitely on a mission, though. My company's been on the mission since we started, not to work with jerks, right? I told you that earlier. Yep. And to create a culture of value. And I'm definitely on a mission. Work does not have to be terrible. Work is work. We should be working hard. It doesn't mean we have to work forever, but we should be working hard. And if we can cut through the crap, frankly, excuse my language, to, sort of get down to what really matters. And eliminate the toxic and focus on positive. All this inefficiency that is in our workplace, it's all about people. Process matters, but it's really about people. People come to work. People who care about things. People who don't care about things. People who are hurting. People who are happy. People come to work. And in this world where artificial intelligence is about to upend our economy, people are going to be the secret sauce that make things happen. And I've focused on this so far in my books, and I will continue to focus on these things that help people work with people better, because there's no reason for us to be miserable at work.
Well, there's no question about that, and I think that's one of the main reasons too why people leave. You know what I mean? They're not happy at work, and they're not happy with their boss or whatever the case is. So that really is good information. Now I'm gonna throw you a bit of a curveball, but
okay.
So
Ready.
This one is just kind of off the cuff here. But okay. So what's something that you either really believe in or enjoy doing that maybe other people think is kind of crazy?
Something that I think people think is crazy. Well, I'm not that crazy. However, let's see. I am a Jane Austen fan, and Pride and Prejudice, The Persuasion, and there is a whole body of novels around Jane Austen fan fiction. And so people think I'm crazy. This is actually where my friends think I'm crazy, because I read all of them. I read all of the variations on those books.
Gotcha.
Like,
gotcha.
How many changes could there be? There's a lot of changes. So, yeah, I like that. And everyone, my husband's like, looks at me like, another one? I'm like, yeah. You watch television, I read books.
Hey, you know what? And that's one of the things is just kind of breaking stuff down differently, because we're talking a lot of business, a lot of serious stuff. But hey, that's one of the things that's a little different about you. Now, let me ask you this. What's something maybe that over the last decade or more that you've kind of changed your mind on? Maybe you're diametrically opposed. You thought this way, a little more information, a little more maturity, something came along, and now you're thinking, wait a minute, I think this way is the better way, and it's totally opposite.
Definitely when I was younger, I thought just saying the answer and moving forward was the right way to go, and people would just follow me along. And today, I still find the answer really quickly, but I have learned to listen loudly. And listening is the number one skill you need to learn as an entrepreneur. Most entrepreneurs, either if they're quiet or they're loud, they have ideas and they move fast. That is the definition of an entrepreneur. They believe they can make it happen. And I may have come into this business because I needed to, not because I wanted to, but the entrepreneur in me moved really fast. And what I have learned over time is I'm much more effective the more I shut my mouth. The more I listen, we are, and I subscribe to high input, low democracy. This is a high input, low democracy organization. And what I mean by that is we ask for people's input, and then someone makes a decision. And it may not reflect all the input. It's very hard to reflect all input, ask 9 people how to screw in a light bulb, you get 9 different answers. So it's very hard to reflect all the input. However, you can honor people's thoughts in your decision. And when people are listened to by the person who's in charge, they respect you more. And the more respect you have from the people around you, the more effective you are.
It's really interesting how, as I'm interviewing you, there's a lot of interweaving spider webs of different things. So you talked about Young Entrepreneur Organization a minute ago, and I had Vern Harnish, which was the founder of YEO, on a while back. Yeah. And then you're talking about this listening a whole lot and the high input and low democracy. Last week we had on the show Ari Weiswig out of Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yeah, and I've been there. I love that place.
Oh, and hey, let me tell you this. And,
so good.
And I love everything about Zingerman's, and not just the products, but the business, the culture, the way it's run.
Amazing.
If you ever get a chance to go check out one of their seminars, I highly recommend it. They're always at Inc. and doing things there. But Ari was talking about how they've got this thing called the Zingerman's Community of Businesses, and what they basically do is that it's not really truly an entity. It's just like a group of all of the managing partners. They get together, but employees can come, and they actually get paid if they want to come. And they'll have a 16, 17-year-old busboy or waitress or whatever that'll come to the meeting, and they'll give input. It's like a global corporate meeting of all the companies, and they have them weekly. And they just talk about what's going on. And he said, hey, 16 to 17-year-olds, like, they know things that we don't know. And it's
so
just
true.
And so, like you said, I mean, hey, it's not that you're necessarily going to do everything they tell you to do, but at least you can hear their voice and take it into consideration when making your decision.
I think I totally, that's so awesome. And, you may not actually do what they tell you to do, but their voice will help shape your answer no matter what. I'm just going to say that for 99% of the people, their voice will help shape your answer.
That's good. That's real good. That really is. Well, and after we tune in, after a brief word from our sponsors, we'll hear more from Lee Caraher, and talking just really about how she recharges her ambitious body, mind, and spirit right here on the Ambitious Radio Network.
Another RepairMyCreditNow.com story.
Home ownership. It's the American dream. It's a goal you've always hoped to achieve. You've spent countless weekends looking for the perfect house on the ideal block. The rates are low and you've saved enough for the down payment. Unfortunately, now the mortgage company says there's a little hitch. Okay, let's be honest. It's a gigantic, gargantuan hitch. It's your credit. And it looks like your estimated house payment will be a lot more.
www.RepairMyCreditNow.com.
Hello, this is Doug Parker with RepairMyCreditNow.com. Do you have less than perfect credit, a repo, maybe some late payments, a collection account? Are they being reported accurately? Studies show that over 70% of Americans have inaccuracies on their credit reports. Where do you fit in? Go to RepairMyCreditNow.com for your free credit report evaluation. And remember, your credit is your future. If you want to get started now, log on now. RepairMyCreditNow.com.
RepairMyCreditNow.com. www.RepairMyCreditNow.com.
All right, we're back on the Ambitious Radio Network. We've got Lee Caraher here, and I'll tell you what. I'm telling you, this may be the most notes I've ever taken on an interview, and I'm telling you, I take a heck load of notes on here. So, with that being said, let's jump in. Let's talk about what does your average quote unquote day look like. What do you do to recharge your ambitious mind, body, and spirit? What does that look like for you?
I'll answer your second question first. So, what I do to recharge. I really subscribe to Tom Rath's Fully Charged book about how to your spirit, your mind, and your body, and a few things. So on the spirit side, I'm a member of my church, and we're active members of our church, and we go every week and we do stuff. And that is a quiet time, inspirational time, and community time for me. Also, I have a couple of apps on my phone that help me take a moment through the day. So I have the app Breathe, which clicks on. I have the Apple Watch, and it buzzes me and it just says breathe. And you're supposed to take 3 deep breaths. And I have seen my blood pressure or my pulse go down because of it. I'm like, that's a good thing. And I also use either Calm, which is an app, or Relax and Rest, which is another app, to do, which I thought was so hokey. I mean, oh my gosh, so hokey, this meditation stuff. But I can say, even if it's 15, 17 minutes or 24 minutes is the longest one on being relaxed, wow, that changes everything. Those 2 things change everything. Also in the body is to move, and we have these things called walk and talk. So when people come to my company, we buy them a pair of sneakers that they keep in the office, and we want them to get out and walk around. So I try to get up and walk around outside at least once during the day. So that's I guess that's not spirit, but that does help my spirit. For my body, it's walking around, trying to eat well, and eating regularly. And I think a lot of us who run companies are like out of time, like we didn't eat. What the heck, right? It's not healthy not to eat and to be hydrated. So I work really hard at trying to hydrate myself and eat regularly and well. And my mind, I read. I read a lot. And I really, you have to work hard today to get points of view that are not your own, because in our channeled world, our social media world, so we all sort of live in echo chambers now where we're not getting opposing point of views. So I work pretty hard at getting opposing point of views into my brain so that I can hope to see things from other people's point of view. So I listen to a lot of public radio, a lot of podcasts that bring me not just my own point of view, but somebody else's. For us, for my spirit, one of the things I really wanted to do when I started my company was be able to volunteer and be involved with philanthropy. So I sit on 3 boards right now, 3 nonprofit boards that are doing great things in the community. One's a college, Menlo College in Atherton. It's a small business arts college. Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, the Episcopal Cathedral of the California Diocese, and then Public Advocates, which is a nonprofit law firm that helps make sure that our rights are taken care of. And I've done a lot of board work over the last 15 years with other organizations, and that really brings me a lot of energy. I may not be able to work for them because I have to, I'm working, I own a company, I have responsibilities, but I can bring my talent and my time to organizations that are doing great things in the world. And I find I just get jazzed by that.
That's great information to share. And, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you've got all this, energy and thoughts and how to do things. And, you can almost apply it endlessly. It's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, they call me, go, hey, are you busy? I said, hey, let me say something. I'm always busy. That's not even like, it doesn't even matter. You can call me at 9 at night. You can call me at 9 in the morning, midnight. It don't matter. I'm busy.
The better question is, do you have time for me now?
Exactly. And so for you to carve out time, to do the volunteering and then to find a way, not just to be busy, but to let that energize you and let that feed you and work on things volunteering that helps you get to the next level. That's really good. Now, what does an average day look like for you? Do you have like a standard time you try to go to sleep and wake up and get a certain amount of sleep, anything like that?
I seem to wake up at 4:30 every day, no matter where I am and no matter how much sleep I've had. So I'm just like going with my body now, and I'm just getting up. And sometimes I get up and I read or I work or I write because I do a lot of writing. Sometimes I get up and I go to the gym. So depending on the day, I just wake up when I wake up. And I really don't have to set an alarm anymore because I just sort of wake up at 4:30, which really is crappy. I'd rather sleep until 6 or 7.
I'm saying I'm not as early as you. Not as early as you, but mine's like 5:30. I wake up.
I wake up, so my body's telling me to get up, so I'm getting up. I try to sleep, because I wake up at 4:30. I try to be in bed by 10. It's not always possible because I am going out doing other things at night. But 10 o'clock, and try to turn off my phone and only not look at any social media after 9 o'clock because it just gets your brain moving. I'm not always successful. I haven't been that successful since the election on that, but I'm getting back to the good practice of not getting involved in what's going on in the world after 9, because you really need to create some space before you sleep.
That's good. That's real good.
So I get up, and if I'm in San Francisco, which is where I live in San Francisco, and I spend a week or 10 days every month in New York. So if I'm here in San Francisco, I get up and I either go to the gym or I read or I write. If I'm in a writing mode, I write. I like to work at the office. I'm not a good work-at-home person. So I'll come to the office. I'll either take the train or I'll drive to the office. And I like to be here. I like people. I feed off other people. At home, I'm very distracted. It's like, oh, look, I can make brownies. Oh, look, there's a laundry. Oh, look, the cat.
There's a sock. There's a stray sock.
There's a stray sock. It still bugs me, but I don't say it out loud anymore. So I just actually recycle the stray socks without anyone knowing. So I'm not going to let my husband listen to this podcast, but just so you know, I buy a lot of socks every year. It's not worth it to me not to be stressed about it. So, but I like to be in the office. I try to eat with an employee once a week when I'm here, and I rotate through the employees about twice a year. I meet with everyone who reports to me at least once a week, either by Zoom or in person. And I free my day so I can be helpful. I mean, my job is to help people do their jobs, not to necessarily do their jobs. So I try to keep some time free. It ends up being very challenging because people want my time. And then I also, every week, I try to meet somebody new. So reach out to somebody I want to meet, help somebody who I don't know, so that you always need to be tending to your network. And because one, I think business draws on a network that is helpful and magnanimous. And the bigger your network, the bigger your profile and the bigger your impact can be. Even if they're not helping you, maybe you can help them. Then I try to get home. Let's see, what do I try to do? I try to get home for dinner at least 3 times a week with my family. One son is at college, the other son is at home. He's so busy that, sometimes I get home, I'm like, where's the kid? So it's very challenging. He's in high school now, so he's so busy that sometimes it's challenging for us all to get together. But on the weekends are family time, and we spend a lot of time together on the weekends.
Now, you mentioned writing a couple of times.
Yeah.
Now, is that specific to writing like another book, or is that journaling, or what is that writing that you're talking about?
It's not journaling. So not right now for book, but when I was writing my book, I would write in the morning. I blog on these topics. I get asked to contribute to different organizations on the topics that I'm doing. For leadership stuff in my company, like where we're going and how to describe things. You can never, describe things enough. So when a topic hits me, I sort of basically wherever the spirit takes me on what I should be sharing is what I write.
Great stuff there. So let me ask this. We're kind of wrapping up the show now. So if someone wanted to engage with your company or wanted to reach out to you for consulting or something to that effect, how's the best way to engage with you?
The best place to see all the stuff that I do is at my personal website, which is www.leecaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com. And you can get to my company, Double Forte, from there, and you can see my books and my consulting and my keynoting and my workshops from there. And my blog is there too. If you're on Twitter, at Lee Caraher is my Twitter handle, and I share a lot there. And I'll put this all over that. And on Instagram, it's also Lee Caraher, and on Facebook, it's Lee Caraher 1.
Cool. Well, I want to tell you, I appreciate you carving out some time to come onto the show. I'm not saying that, like just loosely. I truly appreciate the time that our guests invest in coming on, because I learn a ton every time I do an interview, and I know our listeners get a lot out of it as well. We get lots of comments back about how much they enjoy it. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Doug. What a joy to talk with you.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, remember, and gals as well, we want to thank our sponsors, number one, because we couldn't do it without them. And then tune in on Saturdays. That's right, on Saturdays now to Ambitious Radio, where we interview thought leaders and exciting entrepreneurs changing the faces of their organizations. Remember, you can make money or you can make excuses, but you cannot make both. So go out there and be ambitious.
Thank you for listening to the Ambitious Radio Network, hosted by serial entrepreneur Doug Parker. Join us weekly as we have engaging conversations with ambitious entrepreneurs and thought leaders on topics that can be applied immediately after listening. Like what you've heard? Listen to other interviews at ambitiousradio.com or subscribe on iTunes.